You mentioned at the top of the show that the Browns have been dealing with COVID pretty much all year. They've been hit pretty tough, probably more than these other teams have in terms of players getting COVID and having not even players, but even coaches put it on the COVID list. But they do get Kevin Stefanski back; he'll be on the sidelines. But what does it mean for this Browns team to get a little healthier coming into this divisional matchup?
So for the first like 9 weeks of the season, they didn't have any, like
Yeah,
zero. They were one of the best teams in terms of avoiding any COVID issues. And the last 3 weeks have just been utter hell for them in terms of not only losing players, but it felt like every day, they couldn't even adjust to the sort of the news of the previous day. They were getting more news, more players, and coaches in a lot of cases going out, and it just forced them to control what they could control, not get dragged down into that, and have people step up. So I mean, I had never seen Michael Dunn play before he stepped in at left guard for the playoff game. I knew he was in the XFL. I knew he was in the AAF. I knew he played at Maryland. I had a vague idea of what he was doing. I know he's been with the Browns for most of the season, but there was some element of this where it was like you just had no idea, and it felt almost criminal that he was going to have to try to block Cam Hayward, and then he goes out and plays great. I mean, legitimately
yeah.
great. Not great for the situation, but he just played really well. He gets hurt, and they have a guy named Blake Hant show up who drove to the game from New Jersey, and players had met him before the game in the locker room. He goes out there and has to sort of play. Robert Jackson is a depth gunner. Like he's not even the starting gunner. He's a depth gunner in case the other guy got hurt, and he's up there starting at corner. So from that standpoint, it's shown a remarkable ability to focus on what had to be done, doing your job, all those things. Very easy for linemen or some of these other positions to start thinking in terms of I have to, cover for the other guy, and it just becomes, sort of a domino effect where things get worse because people are trying to do things they aren't supposed to do. And it was a testament to them doing their job and focusing on those things. So getting Joel Bitonio back, he's a second team all pro. He's outstanding. It's huge for them, especially against a team like the Chiefs, where they have, one of the best defensive tackles in football up the middle. And then they have some, decent pass rushers on and the ability to sort of do some stunts and things like that, where he's just got enough awareness to be able to, pick up on some of those things. So that's huge. I mean, the offensive line really is the identity of this team,
Yeah.
in terms of they have been the consistent thing throughout the season. Defensively, it's a bigger deal. The Browns defense is not good. They just aren't. But that doesn't mean that Denzel Ward and Kevin Johnson aren't huge, especially when they're facing off against a Chiefs team that's going to have Tyreek Hill and some of these other Blazers going down the field. I expect they're going to play a lot of quarters. I expect they're going to drop off and try to keep things in front of them. But certainly just the individual matchup of having Denzel Ward out there on a quadrant is way better than Robert Jackson. And you saw the Steelers just went after him relentlessly, as one would. So that just makes him better. Kevin Johnson doesn't tackle anything, but he's a good slot cover guy. So that's certainly important for them. So just a man-to-man element, they are better. The thing they don't get back, and that hurts them quite a bit, is not having Olivier Vernon. He's been the best defensive player the second half of the year. And part of that is because Myles Garrett had COVID, and he was sort of dealing with the ramifications with his lungs for several weeks after that, and still may. He looked great against Pittsburgh the second time, but that was still a concern. But Olivier Vernon was outstanding, and to lose him is tough, especially against a team like the Chiefs, where you're likely going to need to get there with 4 against Mahomes. If you blitz him, you're going to get killed. Adrian Claiborne has played well last week, but he's certainly better suited as a third rusher, and he gave them the option to put him over a guard with Olivier Vernon out there, so it sort of shortens their depth and gives them fewer options against this team. So no, the Browns are not going to be suddenly a good defense, but they're certainly a more competitive defense, and against the teams like the Chiefs, they need all the help they can get.
Yeah, so Pete, I appreciate you joining me today. But before I let you go, one last question here. What do you think that the Browns have to do to move on to this AFC championship game?
They have to win the turnover battle. I mean, consider the fact that they got 5 turnovers in that last game, and they, there was sort of, an element where they were still up by 2 scores, but there was this white knuckle element where people were worried that it was going to go bad. So despite 5 turnovers, it still was close in that standpoint, and they have to make the most of every offensive possession. Consistently teams that play against the Chiefs that settle for field goals lose. You just can't give them any breathing room or the ability to take off the pressure. So if they can avoid kicking field goals, they did a great job of that against the Steelers. Their last 2 possessions were field goals, but before that they had, 6 touchdowns. And if they can win the turnover battle, then they've got a shot at this. That may not be enough, but those are things that have to happen.